you do a couple of other things too.
Yes.
So myself and Kevin, we've spoken about this on the podcast. We've done NLP and hypnosis. I did mine with yours as well, your trainer, which we're going to push now, which is Yvonne Oswald. If you don't know, one of Amazon's bestsellers, top 5 in the world in the industry.
Wow. Probably top 2 now.
Probably top 2, it's probably if not the best, right? Absolutely amazing human being who will give you insights you never thought possible. And she was the person who trained Helene, who is now a NLP hypnosis practitioner, master level.
Yes.
So, give us some insight of, if someone's looking for changes, why would someone want to go for NLP and hypnosis?
Can I just say really quick before you break that down? I think what's really important, because of our audience and our target audience, and we've said this a lot on our episodes with just you and I, that I think the biggest reason I'm so excited about you being on this and talking about this stuff is my journey around the brain. And how important it is for men, especially, I think women as well, but our audience is men, but for men to truly dive into why they are the way that they are, and to understand why you did something, why you acted a certain way. And the earlier you can do that, the more you'll help yourself in your future.
Good point.
And in my eyes, I'm super, super excited to start talking about this stuff, because it's been a journey for me. I'm 43 years young, and I wish I would have done this 20 years ago, and at the end of the day, I'm here. But I think for anybody that's listening right now, I'm excited about the value that's going to come, because of just how important it is for people to just dive into what's going on in their head.
I agree. And I've listened to a lot of the clips that you guys have put out on YouTube. There's a lot of them. And I just want to touch on what you were saying, that your audience is largely men, and I think that it's actually going to change because you are touching on a lot of things like the male brain and how biologically, how does it function, and what are the reasons we do the things that we do. And I've actually seen some of the comments on some of your clips, and there are a lot of women there that are like, yes,
really?
Agreed, yes.
Nice.
So it wouldn't surprise me if you actually get a lot more women.
Nice.
That's really interested in your podcast.
If whoever we can help, that's the reason we're here.
Totally.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably why Pink Pixies was born, was so that I can do the neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis the way that I'm doing it now. I used to charge for it a lot, and I love doing it. I love getting the money, obviously. There was a point where I was thinking, how many people can I actually help if I offered this for free? Or rather on donation only. And so Pink Pixies was born to kind of supplement that, so that I can keep doing it the way that I'm doing it now, which is on donation only. And I agree, it's really important. I think we're going to reach a lot of people just talking about the mechanics behind why we do what we do and how we can change it. And to your question about what the benefits are, is that what you were asking?
Is my experience in this is, I had to be ready to experience what I needed from going for an NLP hypnosis session, right? And I always kind of contemplate, and I hear Kevin's got a great point. I wish I did this when I was 20, but I think when I was 20, I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't think I would have accepted the information in the same way. I think the general human being who has to go for hypnosis, and this is purely my opinion, I want your insights, is when you go for this, you have to be ready.
Totally.
You've got to be at a point where you want to make such a fundamental change in your life that you're willing to accept what the hypnosis actually gives you, and realize that it's not a quick fix. And again, to me, it's this guide that allows you to see the universe and consciousness in a way that then puts you into perspective for purpose, that then allows me to continue working to being a better person.
Yes, yes to all of that. Neuro-linguistic programming is about facing or getting rid of, for that matter, your limiting beliefs. Now, how do you know that there's a limiting belief? Well, something in your life isn't working. I can always guarantee you, if something in your life isn't working, you have either a limiting belief or a negative emotion. Both of those, and I know you said it's not a quick fix, and it isn't, but it is the quickest fix that I have found from having PTSD myself and actually searching for Dr. Yvonne. It was and this is again, like you say, consciousness and synchronicity and all these things. Nothing happens by accident. We're all here for a very specific reason. One of them now is to share this information with people. But for me, I struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. I had, 3-4 panic attacks a night, every night for years. And after we moved to Canada, it kind of became worse. And I got to a point, I think, where I was just done. I just didn't want to continue. I was like, why? Why bother? The world is a mess. I can't live in a world where people hate each other. Look at what they're doing to the animals. It was just, it was a little bit of a victim spiral. But I was actually just really depressed. I didn't want to continue. And then we moved to, Niagara Falls. And I started looking for solutions to this because I've struggled with this for so long. And if I had to be honest, I've probably been struggling with some form of depression or anxiety since I was a child. Like, I was really young. I wouldn't say I was an unhappy child. I felt isolated and very alone and very misunderstood. And I'm pretty sure if I were to be a child now, there were many little labels and boxes that they would have put me in, because I liked doing stuff that the boys like to do. I enjoyed being by myself. I was very outspoken, etc., etc. But anyway, so moved to Niagara Falls and I started researching. And initially I was like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go do a regression therapy, so past life regression, because maybe there's something in a past life that's sticking with me and maybe I can get rid of it. And I find Yvonne's website and I read through it. I'm like, wow, she's really accomplished. She's number 2 or 3 at the time, I think, in the world for cognitive behavioral therapy. Or actually, I can't remember what it was, human behavior technology, something like that. But very, very accomplished, PhD, number 1 author, and she lives 5 kilometers away from me. Wow. And I'm like, there's no way that this woman is going to phone me back. But anyway, so I leave a very discombobulated message on her phone, not thinking that she's going to come back to me. And she phones me back, and we started talking, and we hit it off. I love her to pieces. She's just an amazing human being. And she's like, no, you don't need regression. You need a breakthrough session. I'm like, okay, what is that? So it turns out to be one session, really long session. I think it could be anything from 4 to 10 hours long. But we really delve into your story. So you write your story, you tell me about your life from when you were a child all the way to now. You talk about your relationships, you talk about the things that are not working for you, and then, we deal with it from there. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it was profound. Because nothing changes, but everything changes.
It's true.
Once you're done there, because it changes your perspective of your story. It doesn't change your story, it changes how you feel about your story. Yes.
It's so true.
And the purpose of NLP and hypnosis, to me, in any case, is to not remove the emotions that you feel, or to suppress them, or to get rid of them. It's to deal with them in a functional and,
I feel like for me, even just listening to you makes I'm literally visualizing my session, and I feel like the word that comes in my mind is acceptance of what has been, and I feel like that. And until you go through with it and you truly understand what it's like, you used to always say that to me too, like you need just to experience it. Then it allows you to say, these things were almost necessary in my eyes. Yeah. Right? They were almost necessary for me to experience, to go through, and then I can have acceptance for these things. At least that's how I hear you saying it.
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at it from the one side, what you're doing is you are removing the attachment that you have to the event from the emotion. So the reason why we keep going into cycles, for example, let's talk about death, right? So before I met Jason, the person I was dating died in a motorbike accident. And it was a big shock, obviously. It devastated me for months and months. And for years, even years after we were married, there would be times when I would just suddenly be so sad. And I would look on the calendar and like, oh, okay, it was his birthday. Because, you know, you don't keep track of that after a few years, especially when you're like 28 years old. So I realized that going through this process, that it became such a part of who I was instead of just a part of my story.
Good point.
Yeah, so this process, or once we go through this breakthrough process, or this NLP or the hypnosis, and we start figuring out what the emotions are that's keeping us stuck in the event. And we don't separate you from the event. We don't say it never happened. We don't erase your memory. We don't change the event. But we just separate that deep feeling that you're feeling towards that event that's actually keeping you stuck in there consistently. And what happens is you almost become like an observer. You're like, oh, okay, now you can actually talk about what happened.
Yeah.
Without feeling like you need to start crying, because I couldn't talk about Hannes for the longest time. And I would just tear up and I would start crying. Now I can say, oh, he was a wonderful person. We had a great time together. And it's very sad what's happened, but it is just part of my story. It is not who I am.
Why do you think we give these events, and that's obviously with death, that's a big thing, right? So death is probably one of the hardest things we'll face as humans. But let's use maybe something else that's not quite as big as death. Why do we give so much energy to these things? Like, why do they become events for us? Why do they become things that are triggers? Like, why do we allow that to happen subconsciously, in my eyes?
Honestly, I think it's because we're not aware of who we really are. If you go, this to me, NLP is very spiritual as well. For me, this is where science and spirituality meet.
Totally.
And I feel like when you know who you truly are, you wouldn't hold on to things that are in the past. Unfortunately, within our society, we're either always thinking in the past or we're thinking of the future, and we really find it difficult to stay in the present moment.
That's a good point.
And it's funny. So think about this. When is a memory actually made?
In the present.
In the present.
Yes. So every time that you make that memory, you're breathing new life into something that has been. So and every time you do that, you just continue your cycle instead of being in the now and going, oh, well, look, I've got loved ones around me. I've got food in my stomach. I've got a home. There's so much to be grateful for. But because of the way that society has actually become so materialistic and so push for the next best thing, and we've completely lost, I wouldn't say completely, we're definitely getting back into that now, but we have forgotten that we are actually spiritual or soul beings that chose to have this human experience. And I think as a species and as a race now, we are actually getting back to that now. We are remembering who we used to be. We're remembering that we're actually super powerful. And that sense of separation from source is what keeps us in those emotions. We're not separate. This was all programming. It's all propaganda. We are not separate from each other. We are all part of consciousness itself. We are actually, each of us is an individual, unique, and perfect expression of consciousness itself, who came here to expand consciousness. And how do you do that? So
just to stop in there is, so very timely conversation on consciousness. So for anybody who follows the Joe Rogan show, he had a absolutely stunning guest on, Thomas Campbell, who has scientifically proven the consciousness theory, right? And I would implore anybody to go listen to it. If you have a struggle of the understanding of what consciousness is, he explains it very elegantly. It's all over the place, but he comes, the way he explains it is probably the best explanation I've ever heard of it. I mean, we spoke about this previously, and I think from a line is, at least for me, when you look at consciousness, it's the same explanation as religion, right? So if you look at, from a Christianity standpoint, Christianity had an idea of what consciousness was because we put into the idea as God is in us and we are all God, right? We are all together. God is one, we're made in his image. It's an expression of consciousness. So one of the things that I really love about the concept of going into the hypnosis NLP system is it doesn't matter what your faith system is. Because once you go through it, as you did as a Christian man, you go through it and you realize that whatever your faith system is all tied into the same thing.
Sure.
We're all connected. We're all part of the same thing. We're all part of consciousness, God, whatever we want to call it. Now, what I really love about the NLP hypnosis system, if you have any doubts, if you we've had discussions previously where people go, hypnosis, oh my God, you're going to make me act like a chicken.
Or I'm going to be possessed.
Or I'm going to be possessed. Like it really isn't that. It's, and this is, again, my own perspective is when I went into the session with Yvonne, the session was this guided meditation. That's the best explanation I can give, which opened my eyes to the biggest version of how I connect to consciousness, how I fit into the scheme of things. And when I came out of there, the best explanation I can give in people is, imagine you're sitting in a bus. On this side of the bus is a big rock wall and it's dark. On this side is sunshine. If I put my hand over here and I close that eye, all I can see is darkness. If I do it this way, all I can see is light. But that's choice.
Yeah.
I choose which version of reality and how I see the world. No matter how dark the person next to me sees the world, how I perceive the world is my choice. I can either see the light or I can see the dark, but that option is mine and my accountability to choose that option. And my feeling was, when I came out of that, it was like, oh, I can choose? You mean that it's all happening for me, not to me? And then it's like a light bulb goes off. And I remember, I don't know if you had the same experience, Ken, but when I came out of there, I was like, I wonder how long this is going to last. And I was kind of waiting for it to wear off, and then it just never did.
Yeah.
That's the experience that you kind of speak of. Everything changes, but nothing changes.
Yeah.
You're going.
I was just going to say, like, for me, like, after I did it, because I wanted to do it for so long, and there was just a lot of build up for me. So me finally getting in was like, it was really anticipated and excited for it. And then when it was over, we had a lot of breakthroughs in my session, and like I cannot wait to get the tattoo from that session. But it was like this like weight of the world lifted off me. And I love your analogy of the dark side of the bus versus the light side. Because I agree, like, you realize that you can choose which side of the bus you're on, right? And so for me, like, I was also like, well, what's next now, right? Like, what's the next couple of days going to look like? Yeah. And there were moments of, like, one thing that stood out for me, and I think I shared this with you, like, in my follow-up, was I had, like, the second day, I think it was, like, a little bit of an overwhelming moment where it was just, like, I don't know how to explain it, but, like, all these things just flying past me. And I was just like, what is going on? And so I went out and did my meditation, and like realize like, whew, okay, I'm back in the game. Like, this is okay. But it's different, but then it's not, right? Yeah. It's weird because you think you're gonna have this like.
It's very difficult to explain.
It is. It's so different. It's hard to explain for those. But I think like you mentioned the spiritual aspect of this, and like, you know, I remember my mom asking me, like, was this like witchcraft? Like, what is this, right? Because, you know, I grew up.
If I had $1.
I grew up with religion and faith and all that stuff. And I was like, not like, Mom, it's guided prayer. Like, that's a good way to put it, right?
It takes you closer to your faith.
Yeah. And my friend Jason, who's a former Navy SEAL, he did Ibogaine down in Mexico. And him and I had a conversation prior to me doing the session with you. But he talked about how with Ibogaine, and he's big with faith as well. He actually felt like he talked to God in his session, right? And like just have that breakthrough for him, like, you know, just and I felt the spiritual nature of it. I felt that closer connection to God and my faith, and like when you experience these things, because you're truly going back. And I think just writing about everything alone is therapeutic. Yeah, just going back and you know, mine was like a novel, but like I just like getting it out to realize, you kind of start to identify where what I thought were my problems and where my problems were, it was actually not where my problems were. And so then you start diving in and unpacking, and it's just therapeutic, just getting it out and putting it out there. And I don't know, it's like it's very freeing. It
really is.
The reason why it's such a spiritual experience is because when you are under hypnosis, you are in an alpha state. So you're in a very relaxed state. And we're actually reaching your unconscious mind. So how does this work? So hypnosis is not where you are asleep, it's an awake state. It's just a really deep state of relaxation. And the reason why we do that is because 93% of what you do every day gets run by your unconscious mind. It's not by your analytical, let's put numbers together. Let's rationalize everything. That's your conscious mind. That's the one that takes in information from your external experience, and it tells your unconscious what to do.
Would that be similar to, and again, this is why I love the analogy of listening to Thomas Campbell, because how you're explaining it, he explains it in a specific way that makes it easy for men to understand. I'll explain why.
Yes, because it's logical, right?
So he talks about the logical mind and the intuitive mind, right? Which was it was a light bulb moment for me. And when you're talking about that is what I felt, if I could explain in ways, and I'd like you to give you insight on it. What I felt was when you went in there, generally what happens is when you haven't gone through this process and you try to meditate and you try to deal with these things, your logical mind tries to solve the problem analytically, but your intuitive mind gets overridden all the time. When you go through hypnosis, it almost subdues the logical mind and allows the intuitive mind to come forth, and that then all of a sudden opens up the library of information that kind of goes, okay, well, everything was here already, I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Or actually your intellect was actually stopping you from getting there.
Yes, it's almost it stops you in your tracks. And if from a man's perspective, right, is women are way more intuitive than men are, right? Yes. They are way more in touch with it. I've had this conversation with 6 people so far, right? And it never surprises me the answer. So today I was sitting with Adam Key, who we're going to have on in a couple of weeks. He runs a mold remediation, EPS. And I was explaining the concept to him, and I said to him, have you ever had your mom tell you something? You said this the other day in one of our chats, right? Have you had your mom have an intuitive discussion with you of not to do something? She had no reason, there was no logical idea that she had to do, but she was right. How many times? He goes, I have countless examples ago, but yet we want to dismiss it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I find that from a man's perspective, if you want to understand the intuitive mind, think specifically to your mother. Most men have a good relationship with their mom.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's that maternal instinct that men don't get from their mom.
Right.
From their dad, sorry. So when you have that, think of how many times your mom said something that had no logical reason when she was right.
Other than it's my intuition.
Right, it's that intuition. And that intuition is so telling because we dismiss it so easily. And that I find that when we do the sessions with an expert and master practitioner, that's kind of what we're doing. You're allowing your logical mind to take a back seat because it's always in the front. It's always trying to override. And all of a sudden the intuitive mind comes up. And the one part of the intuitive mind that I don't think a lot of people realize is it gives you access to every bit of information you need.
It is your direct line to God, to source, to spirit, to the universe, whatever you want to call it. You can't reach it with your conscious mind. You can only get there through your unconscious. So you have to be in that relaxed state in order to actually connect.
Well, and you mentioned the subconscious. Like I was thinking about that as well, where you truly are a master at this, because for me as someone who's struggled with like relaxation, with like slowing down to really like deep dive on stuff, I'm very like high energy, fast paced, surface level on a lot of stuff, and I truly was relaxed in a state of like getting into that subconscious mind and pulling these things out and truly like, you know, like touching them, I guess would be the way to say it, not realizing the programming that's involved with the subconscious. Like, and I think that's something that you talk limiting beliefs, and you talk about so many different things that we do, and like our trauma responses, even like just how we handle and react to situations. Like whenever you recognize that, like when you change these subconscious behaviors, now you become much more capable. And I feel since my session, I've been much more cool, calm, and collected with how I deal with like excitement, I guess would be the way to put it. Like I have 3 small kids, or high energy moments where I'm like, you know, processing it way better. My response to things isn't reactionary as much, you know, because I've gone into the unconscious place.
The other part of it, you were saying the logical mind is always trying to override the intuitive. So, and this goes back to spirituality as well. So the divine feminine is the intuition, the nurturer, the one that cares, the one that knows.
Yes.
The divine masculine is more logical, it's more analytical, and it's trying to reason.
And they need each other.
And they do. We need to get to the balance, and that's where we are now, as a whole, as a collective. That is where we are striving to be. That's why we're seeing so many podcasts like this. And it's mostly men running them. They've recognized that for way too long, the masculine has been way too much in the forefront. We try to explain away emotions. Emotions are bad.
Or That's a great example, and I want to touch on one thing which I'd love your insight in. So we talk about ibogaine, right? So I've never been on ibogaine. I know you haven't, but you know guys who have. I've listened to a lot of people's experience. Now I want to connect to ibogaine, psychedelic experiences, mushroom, DMT, or someone who goes and does ayahuasca. I know a couple of friends of mine who've done ayahuasca, who've helped them with their PTSD tremendously. What I always find super interesting on the process is, if I could explain, or I'm going to give an insight, and I'd love your insight on this. So ibogaine is a chemical format, and I've heard when guys talk about ibogaine, they say it's horrible. It's 12 hours of pretty much consciousness getting forced into you and showing you everything in a way that's horrible. Everyone I've spoken to says it's a horrible experience, but it's changed their lives.
Yeah.
Psychedelics, depending on the level you take, gives you, again, that touch with consciousness, but it's chemically induced. Ayahuasca is kind of the same, right? What I found is, to me, when people explain what that is, it's getting to it with a force directive. So the directive is, I'm going to give a chemical input that's going to shut off certain parts of my brain to allow the intuitive to come off, and there's going to be the struggle between the two until I see the reasoning of the intuitive mind, which gives me the consciousness, right? Where I find this process does the same thing, but it's
softer.
It's softer. It kind of pulls you into
force,
it. Yeah, it's not force. It kind of pulls you into it. But with that said, you have to be in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
You can't do this unless you're ready.
I
for it.
agree with
You
that.
have to want it.
Yes.
That is one of the prerequisites. You have to want to do it. You have to want to change. This is why I stopped doing smoking cessation, because I would ask clients before I speak to them. I normally have an hour session before them on the phone just to see where they are. And if you come to me and you're like, oh, I have to stop smoking because my husband said he's going to kick me out of the house, then I'm not going to help you, because it's not going to work for you.
Right.
You don't truly want to, right?
I'm not going to be your excuse. I'm not going to be, oh, I've tried everything. But when it comes to, hey, are you drinking your water afterwards? Hey, do you keep your carrot sticks nearby? Because that is actually the addiction. It's actually not to cigarettes. It's actually to the sugar that they coat the tobacco with before they actually make the cigarettes. So are you doing these extra things, the homework? Are you doing the work to make sure that you don't relapse, right? And hypnosis is great for that when you really want to. But if somebody doesn't really want to, or if let's say you have a child and they're 20 years old and they're having a lot of issues and they're living in your house and you want them to make changes to their life, and you tell me, hey, I'm sending my kid to you because they have to see you. I will not see that person.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be there.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah. It is. And, even if you are not sold on the entire idea and you're very skeptic, you will still gain so much from this. But you still have to want to, and you still have to want to work to it.
I can speak to that, because when I went to my session, I did feel I needed it, right? But this is where I would say that there was one of the times where I learned to listen to my intuition, my gut, before I allowed my logical brain to override, right? So when Helene went to Yvonne, she did the session, and she was very clear with us. She said, like, listen, you're going to want your spouse to do it too, because you're going to have a very difficult time with them, because you're going to raise your frequency and they're going to be down here. So Helene was very specific, like, if I'm going to do this, you have to do this. I was like, I'm happy to do it. And I remember having my logical brain already questioning everything she's going to do. She's going to pull me in and she's going to tell me this, and I'm not going to believe
bullshit.
it.
It doesn't work.
Exactly, right? So you question everything, which is what human beings do. And, us as men, we kind of, there's got to be a logical reason to everything.
Men have a tendency to debunk everything.
Yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Yes, it's not easy living with you guys.
Yeah, but
I agree.
From this level, and I'd say it would be the first time that I would say I consciously connected to consciousness. My gut said to me, there was a little voice in the shoulder, whatever we want to call it, right? We've spoken about before, said to me, when you go into this with a clear mind. Go into this, accept everything, but I'm not telling you to accept it without questioning it. You're allowed to question it, but don't question it before you've allowed it to actually do what it does. And honestly, I went in that way and went and sat down, and I went to the person. It blew my socks off. It was insanely good.
Well, you make a good point, Helene. I think about veterans. I'm a veteran, right? And I know a lot of veterans have done ibogaine. The friends that I know that have done it are veterans. But I think, and I can't speak to ibogaine and that whole process. I know a little bit about it. I don't know a lot, but But I believe the big difference with this one, like you said, is the choice to say, and this was my story, enough is enough. I'm tired of what I've been experiencing. I want to know why this has been going on, and I want to fix it. Because I remember what I know, our parents, right? They know us like through our whole lives. And one of the things that stood out to me was like my parents would say, and I always thought it was my deployment stuff, like where, post-deployment, they would say, like, you've changed, like something's off with you. Like you snap like this, you get angry about this, you get angry about that. And I didn't understand why, right? And I would have these interactions, and sometime last year, I had a moment where I flew off the handle and I snapped about something. And I hurt the ones around me that I loved, and it made me, like, after the exchange occurred, I went, why did I do that? Why did I act like that? Why did I do that specific thing? And so, of course, I apologized, but at that point it was too little too late. And you realize, like, there's got to be better. I've had this journey with my physical fitness, but like even with my mind, right? And so there's a lot of veterans out there though that are just accepting that, like, well, that's just how I am, and they're not doing anything about it. And so to your point, if that person were to come to you and because of being forced there, it's not going to do much for you. No. Because you have to want this change, and you have to want better, and you want to say, like, and for me, like, I looked at it as like, this isn't how my story ends. This isn't the way it should go. I know there's a happy guy inside there somewhere. How do I get him out? Yeah. And so for me, it was the quest to find who that person was. And like, when you actually, are hungry for the change and you desire it, you're going to get something from it.
Absolutely. The whole point of the reason why we do the neuro-linguistic programming as well as the hypnosis is because the NLP that we do in the beginning, remember all those questions that makes no sense. Like, I don't know, what are you talking about? Yeah. Those questions don't even make, that's a double negative. All those questions. It's there to dismantle your limiting belief. For example, my mother hates me. Okay. Cool. What would happen if your mother hated you? And most of the time, we call it the Cartesian, but it's a set of questions that we ask you that starts to dismantle or actually send your conscious mind on this wild goose chase to try and find the answer, while your unconscious go, oh, thank God,
I'm free.
I can actually start working on the solution, because it's always trying to find a solution.
Sorry, can I ask you? So, explain to everybody who doesn't understand. We may have a better understanding. What's a limiting belief? Explain the process of what a limiting belief is.
It's any kind of programming that you have grown up with, or a belief system that has been ingrained in you without you even noticing it. Okay. So before you're the age of 7, you've been told 150,000 times, no, don't do that, you can't do that, this is not, we're poor, we don't have money. So depending on your threshold, or how many times you have to hear something before you believe it, you could start believing, hey, I'm stupid because one teacher told you that you're stupid. Okay. So in all of these limiting beliefs, or most of them, start before the age of 7. Because you have limited... I can
give you an example of it. I feel an example in my life of a limiting belief is because of the extreme religion that I grew up with. When it came to God, faith, and religion, a limiting belief for me was that every other religion was wrong. Anybody who didn't believe the way that we believed was wrong. And so I had to truly unwire that.
Yes. So religion is one of those things that's it's a tough subject with this, because I want to be able to help everybody, and I know I can help if you want to be helped, right? So you have to meet people where they are. If they are very religious, that's awesome. Because
it doesn't really change anything.
No, it doesn't change anything, because they still have a subset of values and beliefs.
Sure. Can I ask, on saying that though, so a good point is when we talk about religion. So I think Kevin's brought this up in previous podcasts, where we talk about religion in the fact of is, I'm okay questioning my religion because I have faith.
Yes.
Right. Which puts you in a very different bracket, because I can sit and have a conversation with someone who might not believe what I believe, but I still have faith in what I believe, which I think is very different to just following a religion on a very contextual point, is it says this, so I do that.
And you have to remember, with religion, a lot of the rules behind it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is you're not allowed to question.
See, and this is it. So again, I put a definitive difference between faith and religion. I think we're on the same page with this. You as a person of faith, who is Christian, you are not scared to question the points within the religion, not the faith, the religion. And I think it's very important that if they come to you, you've got to be someone who's okay with questioning, because questioning is not a bad thing, right?
No, we were taught that it was a bad thing, but that was part of the programming.
Is that part of the limiting belief?
That's part of a limiting belief, and it's part of the societal programming. So you have to remember, and we could get slaughtered for this, but that's okay.
That's all right.
But religion, as good as the values are, and I believe in the values, don't kill, don't rape, don't hurt, don't steal, don't covet, those type of things, these are good values. These are things that we should be, that's innate. Human beings are actually made of love. It's not innate for us to actually hate or kill or do any of those things.
But we choose to either live in fear or love, right?
Yes, and there's no space for both at the same time. You're either in fear or you are with love. So the programming that we've been under for such a long time, and this is from governments, and you saw it during 4 years ago, the programming was keep people in fear, because then we can control them. Religion is, unfortunately, a lot of the religions have been corrupted in that way to make people believe certain things, and it's very easy to do.
Oh, totally.
How many times have you heard, let's just go back to the basics, and language is very important here. So the language to me has been corrupted in the largest of ways. How do you make a living? I'm alive already. If you are breathing and you're standing, you're alive already. So how do you make a living? See, it's these small things that we never question, because it's been so ingrained in us that we believe that it's just part of life, and it's not.
So on that, can I ask a question, right? So when we're talking neuro-linguistic programming and also the understanding of language, because you make a very good point. There's we've had discussions offline about where I would explain, and this is something you taught me, right? So I would explain to someone that if someone says to me, listen, I'm telling someone I'm going to be late for a meeting, right? Or they tell me they're going to be late for a meeting. I respond with the words, no worries, which is a double negative, correct? Versus I then choose the words all good. Now in your mind is, and it was a kind of a revelation for me, and I'd like to expand on it. So the revelation for me was the usage of the language changed the context. Even though you don't realize the context has changed, two negative words are still two negative words, regardless of how you perceive them. Is that correct?
Well, you have to remember that the mind, or the unconscious mind, where everything gets run from. So your behaviors get run there, your organization, your memories, everything. And it thinks in terms of pictures. It does not understand grammar. So if I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant sitting in a blue tree, what are you going to think of?
Pink elephant.
That's exactly what you're going to think of, because it doesn't hear negatives. It doesn't compute. So when you use language like no problem, all your mind is hearing is problem.
No problem.
Yeah. And if you say don't worry, it's not going to hear don't. It's only going to hear worry.
Right. So that's interesting to me. So expand more on how we see it in pictures, right? Because again, when she said pink elephant, I saw pink elephant. So how does that relate back in? So when we
in a blue tree.
In a blue tree.
Remember,
yes.
in a blue tree. Yeah.
So when we see that in pictures, right? So relating, so our mind, again, how does that dictate? Because all language that's said to you. So regardless of what the language is. So if you read something, and the reason I'm touching on this is it always comes back to the CIA programming that there's a lot of CIA programming that specifically works on neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
How they use wording, right?
And consciousness as well, they know all about it.
Right. So now that type of wording is, so if you write something, and we've seen this the last 4 years, especially over COVID, right? So think of when you saw the presenter on TV on CNN, the CNN anchor, right? He goes on the news and he says a specific lining of words, right? And then that specific lining of words is repeated through every news article by every different person as if it was planned, right? That planning is
That's programming.
It's programmed. It's a cycle.
It's absolutely
Right.
programming.
Now let's break it down to its simplest terms. This is something that we do on a daily basis that we're completely unaware of.
Yes. And it happens from childhood. And we don't even know that we're doing it. Don't do that for this reason, don't do that for that reason. We create all of these little programs that's running in the background. And before you know it, all you are these external programs.
Okay.
And depending on your threshold, depending how many times you have to hear a specific thing before you decide that is true, They just have to blast this programming a few times from a few different areas, because now you're like, oh, I heard that once before. I didn't think it was true the first time, but now I've heard it again, so now it must be true.
I want to take this back. So what that takes me back to the religious and even the government aspect of manipulation would be the word I would use, right? If I think back to my childhood where I grew up in extreme religion with a private school, and the manipulation by leaders or organizations to get their people to do what they would need them to do.
Yes.
In my mind, if I think about these mega churches and these schools and things like that, right? I would call it, even in a business. Like, I came from a corporation that, you know, their culture was like longevity within the company. And they created this culture of people that every meeting they started with, this is programming, every meeting they started, when you stood up, you told your name, the location you came from, and how many years you've been with the company. That's literally programming, because it became a contest in the room to see who was the longest tenured person. And it was a big deal when you were that long tenured person, right? So is that programming to say, don't leave us, stay here forever. When you think about religion, you're programmed to not question the rules. You're not don't question
Follow
what we're doing.
without question.
In fact, if you question, you're going to hell.
I mean,
You're not allowed to doubt anything.
And what really woke me up, right? So this is what allowed me to like truly. And my mother would vouch for this. I'd always stay up and have these late night conversations with her about just God and faith and what if, why is it like that, or what if, right? What if it's not actually the case? And my point of even saying all this, right? If God is the God that we believed He is, when Jesus walked the earth, the person that never went in and claimed a religion anywhere, if He was the God that we believe that He is, then why are all the other religions wrong?
Yes.
Right. And so for me, that was a question that always stuck with me, where, you know, if we're really truly believing these stories of the Bible, and we're believing all the things that are out there, well, then who cares what religion you are? If it's all under the same principles and beliefs of a higher power,
it doesn't matter.
And to me, what it is, it doesn't really matter. But the organizations are doing stuff where they're trying to manipulate you to stay put, so that you continue to provide and give them financial resources so that their organization can stay alive.
And it's fascinating to speak about that, because while we're talking about that, the reason we're so open to talking about it is because our programming through the hypnosis and NLP has been broken, which is part of what you do, correct?
Yes.
You, besides breaking your limited beliefs, which you, again, it's very personal, because it's going to be based on your experiences, things that you've done, your traumas that you're dealing with. But, I mean, it doesn't stop there, does it?
No, it's very personal, and you never know where a session is going to go. So you ask somebody to write their story. I normally know where to go with that, because I can see what they didn't write about. So if you don't talk about your children, I know, okay, well, there's something that we really need to discuss. And it might not necessarily happen in that first session. Normally, it's only one session, but if somebody really has a lot of trauma, or they are very stuck in their beliefs, you might need more than one session. It doesn't happen very often, and I also offer Zoom calls for the ladies that have done this, and there we discuss a lot of those things. But it goes very far. The programming that you're talking about, it's systemic. It's global, it's systemic, and it's in absolutely everything that we've ever...
And it's thousands of years old.
And it's thousands and thousands of years old. Because what is the best way to get somebody to do what you want them to do is you make them believe that they are in control of their lives when they really are not. You have to work 9 to 5. You have to make a living. How do I make ends meet? Just listen to the language, and you can hear how it's been manipulated over time. Well,
that's the struggle I have with school systems, even, right?
Absolutely.
Like we're taught in schools to grow up and get ready to go to college, get a good job, make your money, and work.
Retire and die.
Yeah.
Well, the purpose of it was to create little employees.
Right.
To create the people to push the elites up, right?
Right.
Why do governments not like it when you have a lot of self-employed people? Why do they not?
No limited control.
Yeah, why don't they support entrepreneurs?
Right.
Like, how many times have you? I mean, you the other business that you're. How many times have you heard people don't qualify because they are self-employed?
Yeah. Why is Trump rocking the system right now? Because he's pushing freedom of speech, where they want suppression under freedom, right? So we can't have free speech because it might hurt someone else, but then that completely deletes the idea of free speech, which is I'm liking where the conversation is going, because what I want to touch on is we talk about people who are awake. COVID was a great thing because I think it woke up a whole bunch of people, and part of what the hypnosis I also feel does is once you release that barrier you have between the intuitive mind and your logical mind, which you go through this, the next part that I always find exciting is it's amazing how people all of a sudden, people that have never spoken about extra paranormal experiences, intuitive experiences, is there conspiracies in the government, right? Which now we know they're out in the open. And all of a sudden their minds are open to speaking about things where previously they were closed, which I always find fascinating.
Yeah. It takes a lot to dismantle it. Some people have been stuck in that belief system for so long. It's like being in a cult.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, growing up, I remember you have to go to school, you have to go to college or university. You pick one job. I always felt from the age of 16, like, this is so stupid. Why? How am I supposed to know what I want to do for the rest of my life? And if you know anything about my life, you would know that I didn't know shit.
None of us do.
No, and I have had so many careers, and I've given so many things a shot, and I get bored really quickly, so I start one thing, and I'm like, now I can do it, now I'm bored, now I don't want to do it anymore, right?
Totally really.
So I was absolutely, during my childhood in any case, I was definitely the odd one out. I was probably the scapegoat. I didn't do things normally, if you want to put it that way.
I think the right word there is you didn't conform.
No,
I think that's the right word. Which I think
deep sense of hatred towards authority.
Yes, and I think those people in our society are the ones who kind of start questioning. But to take this back to how you run the hypnosis session, right? So we come for a session, that's a breakthrough session, which can be anything from 4 to 10 hours, right?
Yeah.
My experience is it sounds long, but you walk out of there, you feel like $1 million, and it doesn't feel like 8 hours. Mine was an 8-hour session, and I walked out like, wow.
That's because you experience time dilation.
Yes.
Your mind is literally taken to another place.
Yes.
The neurolinguistic programming, because we are asking all those questions and your conscious mind keeps circling and finding other things, the unconscious is finally able to release. And then we do what Yvonne developed, which was the angel model, where everything that we've done previously in the session, writing down the emotions that you didn't know you had or that was hidden, we clear all of that. And I don't know if you remember the angel model.
I believe it. I feel like I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if
it's
I'm
a
allowed
form
to give
of
too
hypnosis.
much away on that, but I feel like I remember that one.
Yeah. It's a form of hypnosis, but it's meant to clear those negative emotions really quickly. And the purpose of the NLP in the beginning is so that I can extrapolate the things that you don't even know is there.
Is that the one where we go back to our parents? Is it that one?
No, I think that's the inner child one. But the angel model is when you're in the movie, in the cinema.
That's right.
Yes, is that the one?
Yeah. I remember that one now.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's a way for us to take your mind into a place of relaxation, where we can now kind of bundle up all of these negative emotions and limiting beliefs, and we give your mind a way to clear it without having to sit for 600 hours with normal talk therapy, which in my opinion is good for some people, it works for some, but it actually embeds a lot of things deeper if you don't get resolution on it.
I think what's important, so like I've done talk therapy for many years, and for me personally, I know it's not going to fix a thing. Yeah. But I do it because for me, I'm one of these that needs to just like release it to an unbiased soul.
Fair enough.
That can help me process whatever it is that I'm really like need to kind of like just talk through. And then also get like just some perspective sometimes from it's almost like having an outsider, like you guys know me, right? And in his case, like he knows me, but through that setting, and it's more for me, it's a help to just get it out. But to me, like I think there's a place for talk therapy if you know how you're going about it, because in my mind, they're not really fixing anything, and they're not going to fix anything because ultimately they need you to keep
come back.
Yeah.
It's a money
game.
Money spinner.
But also talking from the type of person you are, like us knowing you is you're on a journey of consistent improvement. So this is not the only thing you've done. You've done the Hypnosis NLP. You've gone on courses where you've spent a weekend driving through these men's courses. Like you've done a lot of work. Yeah. So I think the important thing to note with this is you weren't looking for a quick fix. You were looking for mechanisms to become a better person.
Totally.
So
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm afraid of it, but I do kind of I even want to consider doing Ibogaine just because I have a Marine friend that wants to do it. I know you and I have talked about it,
I want to give it and not because I need it, because I want to understand the experience from the level that they see it, so I can have a better insight.
Totally.
Yeah, so your the way that it works is your conscious mind, where you take in information that gives you logic and reason and all those things, does give instruction to your unconscious, right? But now, because you've been told 700 times or 150,000 times no, or you've got all of these limiting beliefs, it becomes these little filters through which you now give instruction. So a lot of people are like, why can't I just tell her? Why can't I just stick to my diet? All of these things. And that's because you haven't cleared your filters. Your filters are super dirty.
I can't stick to my diet because I like cookies.
Yes, I love
cookie
eating
sounds really
cookies.
good. I like, who doesn't like a good cookie?
So basically what happens is every time you create this little belief, and I call it ego. So a little piece breaks off and goes, oh, I'm stupid because my teacher told me I'm stupid, my dad told me I'm stupid. And it can happen once or it can happen 10 times. It depends on the person. What is your threshold? So a little piece breaks off, and now that little piece, which is part of the whole, and it still believes that it's serving the whole, and it's giving... It's protecting the whole, and it has the bigger picture's best interest at heart. However, it's coming from a 5-year-old's perspective, and that 5-year-old didn't have context to see that it doesn't have all the information. So yes, we don't have money to do X, Y, Z, but you have food in your stomach and you have a roof over your head. We don't have money for you to have tons of Legos, but we do have money for that. But that little mind only hears, oh, we don't have. So now it breaks off from the whole. It still it operates under the impression or under the guidelines of what it thought to be all of the information, but it doesn't have all the information because it wasn't developed enough to have it. So now you have that trigger, and you have a lack trigger, and you have an anger trigger, and you have all of these little egos that's broken off, thousands of them, over a period of a lifetime, or 44 years. And every time you get triggered, one of these little egos jumps in and it goes, hey, come on, man, we're not going to do this. Let's get angry. Let's get defensive. Let's do this. Let's do that. And the purpose of NLP, or this breakthrough session, is to kind of dismantle them in a kind and beautiful and loving way and say, hey, you know what? Thank you. I understand that you are doing everything that you believe is there to protect me. I am an adult now. We are an adult. We don't need that anymore. So let's just become back. Let's integrate back into the whole, or into the being, and become an entire person again.
So it's about understanding that kind of, because like from a personal perspective, is when you talk about the 5-year-old that kind of has that one inset, is I think in our personal relationship. So I know that there's times where I'll get angry about something, right? That previously I just let it ride and kind of go in because of pride and ego. When that actual thing happens, I recognize that child and go, what the hell are you doing? I'm an adult. Why am I acting this way?
Sometimes it takes longer.
It's shorter now. It used to take a lot longer. But honestly, it's funny you say that, because I see that 5-year-old come out in the weirdest ways on that. And the only difference between now and previous is after I've gone through this growth process and trying to understand it, is now I recognize it. Right, I don't know, and the thing is, as much as I recognize it, is I want to be very clear with everybody, is this isn't a fix-all program when you go through hypnosis. There's a lot of work you have to do afterwards.
It's consistent work.
Consistent work.
It's a journey.
Right. Yes.
Well, it's the beginning of your journey, actually.
Yes, that's a great point to put it, because you go into this and you come out and you feel great, right? I cannot explain to you, you will feel fantastic, but there's still work to be done, and consistent work and never-ending work.
That's right.
Because it's a consistent growth state. Because you can't solve everything for every problem you have. What happens is it kind of clears up. The glass that's almost full is almost made empty, and now you have space. But you've got to be very careful not to keep filling it with shit.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So I find it very telling that previously I would have... what Helene likes to call is my man tantrums. Right?
My mantrums, yes.
My mantrums, where I'd have this tantrum because I'm getting angry about something. And previously I'd go, no, I'm just angry. You had your ego kicking your pride. But now when it happens is I kind of recognize what that is and go, wow, you're acting like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? And I'll immediately try and switch out of it.
Yeah.
And that has been a very, very useful analogy that you gave right there, because it gave me insight into what the hell are you doing in those moments where you allow your ego and that anger and those things to bubble up.
The defensiveness.
Which
will absolutely break a
100%. And with us, we've spoken about this before. Like we're very adamant on that anger is a weakness.
Yes.
There's no there's no two ways about it. Anger is weakness.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't serve you in any point. You as a military man, if you've had basic training, you've had advanced training within the military. The one thing they tell you, what do you not want to do in a situation where you're under fire?
Lose your cool.
You don't want to lose your cool, right? You can't lose your cool because you lose sight of what you want to do, which is a very important analogy. Anger is a weakness even in a violent situation.
Right.
Anger is actually just a symptom of all the unresolved sadness and fear and guilt that you haven't dealt with.
Very well put.
It comes out of your pores because you've suppressed all of the other things. So
that's a good analogy.
So when we go through this process, I mean, the angel model, remember, we cleared the anger first, and then you deal with all the rest.
Yes.
But there's a huge subset of emotions that go under anger: frustration, self-hatred, vengeance.
I think what I've experienced and as you mentioned, I've gone through a lot, right?
Yeah.
I've done a lot in the past year. I would go beyond that to just try to get to where I am today.
But just your past, you are a military veteran.
Yeah.
You were a professional athlete. You went to Afghanistan. Yeah. You did 2 tours, right?
3 tours total.
You did 3 tours. You were in the middle of
3 years in the combat zone.
Right. So and it's telling to say to someone who's got that background, right? You're a military vet who was. You were deployed, and in your training, you were told, in the heat of violence, in the heat of under fire, when you are in the worst situation in the world, what do you not do? Lose your cool, get angry, do not succumb. What the point I'm making is, even in the most violent situation, it is something that is a detriment, not an advantage.
You're told to channel it, and then also channel the anger, channel the fear, and use it, right? Mm-hmm. Use it towards what the objective is. Mm-hmm. But on the outside of it, everybody releases it, right? Mm-hmm. So when you come back, or when you're not necessarily in an active moment of stress or duress, you release it in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's in the gym, whether it's with somebody else that just pissed you off because they took your cookie, you pick a reason, right? Which is real, that happens. So, but I do want to go back to something where relationally, when we talk about. We did. I think our episode got corrupted, but the episode we tried to discuss relationships, and we mentioned anger not having a place in these, right? Or what is really a lesson that I've learned in my journey here is that I'm still a human being. Okay, I'm still going to have things that will kind of set me off.
Yes.
How I respond is really important, though. Yes. And so recognizing that 5-year-old that just came out to play for a little bit and go, "Hey, dude, that's not cool." You better fix it. And so I've recognized for me is whether it's with my kids, with my wife, in these relational moments where I lose my cool just a little bit. And to be honest with you, my anger has really subsided. It's not been nearly as much. But when I've had times where I've messed up, I'm immediate to apologize for it. Where I'm you know what? I shouldn't have acted that way. That wasn't the right thing to do.
I think it's really important to know or to notice that anger and every subset of emotion under anger, it's normal human behavior when you are put in certain situations, right? So we don't want to suppress anything or say, I know you say anger is a weakness, and to a point, I do agree with that. If it's uncontrolled and if it's dysregulated, then yes, it does have a space because it tells you something. Your emotions is how your unconscious tells you that something isn't wrong. So if something happens and you get angry and you go, don't white knuckle it, acknowledge it. See what it's trying to tell you. And this goes for every emotion. It doesn't just go for anger. It goes for every emotion. You never want to white knuckle it. You always want to acknowledge that it's going on. Like you say, I see the 5-year-old coming out to play. Acknowledge it. Maybe try and figure out where that comes from so that I can actually address the underlying issue of why it's coming out.
Right.
But there is a place for every emotion as long as you are regulated.
Yeah. And I like that analogy. It's not to say anger is a weakness, but it's not to say that you shouldn't get rid of it, or as you say, white knuckle.
Yeah, it's part
understanding
of your human
that you are going to get angry, to understand the emotion, understand why the emotion is coming up, take accountability. Right, and then again, you said often is then revert back to neutral.
Transform it, transmute it. Yes.
I want to stop us there so we can just take a quick break.
We might have to do a part 2.
We can listen. We can bring in so many. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back. Thank you, Lou. Your coffee made me pee a lot.
Me too.
So, where were we?
Consciousness, I guess.
Well, we're talking about consciousness, and I think we're diving back into the anger anger points that men deal with, and that the most important part is not suppressing anger, but first of all acknowledging, understanding, and then reverting it back to neutral. Now, explain to everybody what do you mean by revert to neutral? What does that mean to everyone else?
So, I always say when people come to me, they normally are at their end. They've tried everything else. I've had somebody telling me that if this doesn't work, I'm getting myself lobotomized. So no pressure.
Wow,
so they're running really hot.
That's rough.
That's stressful.
Yes, and
Wow.
it was a veteran actually.
Wow.
They're running really hot. So when you are in a stress state, you physically feel hot. Your body feels like feel like you're in fight or flight. Your stomach's in a knot. You feel like your breathing is shallow. So there are physical symptoms or physical things that you can feel on your body when you are actually in that stressed out state.
Sense.
So a lot of times I get people in that state because something's happened, their spouse cheated or somebody died, and I normally won't even see somebody right after someone died. They need some time to grieve and process on their own, although this will definitely shorten that period by a lot. Mm-hmm. But they have to be ready for it, right? So the whole purpose of doing the NLP and dismantling those beliefs and going through each of those beliefs and then clearing those emotions is so that people can get back into stillness. Now, what I call neutral to me is kind of 0 point. It's here in my sternum, just between the bottom of your ribs. And you have to, when you want to be in true neutral, in my opinion, and this is what works for me, is you breathe in very deep and you breathe out. And you just settle in that little point there in your rib cage, and it's really still and neutral. What a lot of people do is they meditate because they believe that that's going to bring them stillness. And then you hear a lot of people go, "Oh, I can never get my mind to shut up. It's always running." Da, 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 da. And a lot of times it's because your mind and your body is not in the same space. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to calm your mind down, and you get your mind down to a bit of a quieter noise level, but you didn't actually combine that with what your body is doing.
You make a good point about the mind constantly going, and I've cited this book a number of times. The Untethered Soul, is my Navy SEAL friend recommended that to me, and in that book it says essentially our brain, there's a person inside of us that's like the most negative human alive. That if you pulled that person out, put him in the chair next to you, you would hate that guy or girl. Like they would be the worst person ever that you would never want to hang out with because they're constantly giving you the worst shit you could imagine. So you need to be aware of that. And it's like having the good devil on, the little devil on the one side, and then you have the angel on the other side talking to you the whole time. But if you're aware of what they're saying and what they're doing, you can do a better job of controlling that devil.
And it's the awareness, right?
It's the awareness.
What is the difference between somebody that does this and a narcissist? Well, a narcissist by nature does not have self-awareness. They don't recognize that anything that they do can do damage anywhere else. They don't have self-awareness. They're never going to look inside and go, well, what did I do to create the situation? And this is again where creating your reality comes in, right? Because we create our reality via our emotions, but that's a whole different podcast. We're not going to go into that today. But in essence, if you're not aware of the things that you are thinking, then how are you going to be any better? This process helps you to slow down. And the message that I continuously get is, I call it a spiritual message or download, whatever you want to call it, is slow down to speed up. And I've been getting that message consistently for the last year.
That makes sense.
So you have to slow down so that you can hear your thoughts and then stop them.
That's so relative with sports, with shooting, with everything you do. Like
slow down.
Slower is faster. And in reality, like, so if I, controlled breathing, I'm going to slow my body down. I'm going to relax. Like we had a workout there a week or two ago. We were doing cross training, and I literally everybody thought I was dying, but my heart rate was so elevated. I laid down, closed my eyes like I was resting to bring my heart rate down. Everybody was laughing at me. When he finished the rep, I bounced right up and I went and did my set. it was my way of like neutralizing
it. Yes, and the same goes for being in neutral. That's the same thing.
So would it be fair to say, right? So I wanna kind of, as we wrap up in this, I want to give people some insight of the true benefits of going for a hypnosis session in NLP. So I'm going to break down some terms, and I want you to give us some insight. So before you go for, or you want to go for NLP, and I'd say that if you're someone that's searching for it, you're probably ready for it because you're searching for it.
And then you will probably find me. There's no coincidence.
Right, there's no coincidence. Yeah. So if you're ready for it and you go for the session, right, you're going to go through a session which is going to put you to a higher state of consciousness.
Relaxed state.
Relaxed state. That relaxed state is then going to allow you to use your methods and your tools to dismantle negative, right, or limiting beliefs, to allow that person then to get to a more neutral state of where they are. So that the glass will become empty, that allows them to fill it up.
Yes, it will allow them to become an observer instead of becoming so attached to everything that's happening around them. And this is, again, it kind of touches on creating your own reality because, you know, you, like you said before, you choose how you want to be, right? But if you have so many filters and you've got so many unresolved issues, it becomes really difficult for you to become an observer because you get so attached to everything. And it's that detachment, and it's not detached to, now I'm a zombie, I don't feel anything, no, it's just you can recognize what's happening. And you're not the child that throws the tantrum without knowing why you are throwing the tantrum. You become aware of everything that you're doing. You become aware of your use of language. You become aware of your thought process. You become aware of how negative you sometimes think and talk to yourself. And you get the ability to actually stop those thoughts dead in its tracks and go, you know what? No, I'm choosing something different. I want to be better. So, you know, the whole process helps you to actually create the future that you want for yourself.
Which, to me, like, between when things happen, I guess, let me say it like this, when things happen, and it's in the book, it's when I was with you, I can give it energy, or I can recognize that this is a moment in time and allow it to pass. But if I give it energy, it's going to become an event.
Sometimes it needs your energy. Sometimes it's a lesson. Sometimes it's an opportunity. This comes back to the spirituality of all of it, right? So if we are souls that chose to have a human experience, there's a reason why all of these things are happening for you. And this is why you have to meet people where they are. If I just start a session like, hey, did you know that you actually created all of this? I'm not gonna have any rapport with you. I have to meet them where they are, and then go from there. It becomes a situation where afterwards you can see, okay, you know, I recognize now that I have created this situation so that I can deal with this years later, or I can deal with this in a much better way. But there's, in my opinion, anything that happens in your life, you've put there on a soul level, you've put that there so that you can learn something on this journey. Because what does consciousness want to do? It wants to expand, it wants to learn, and wants to grow towards love and abundance and unconditional love, for that matter. And how does it do that? It breaks off fractals of itself and sends it out into the wide yonder with free will. And then that information goes back to source. That's how you expand. So all of these things is there for us to experience for a reason. And for a season sometimes. So it's very important to know that yes, we can go through a piece of lifetime, or we can go through a section of life where things just seem to not go well. There's something there. So your mindset and the way that you look at it is going to determine how you get out of it.
Totally.
And at the end of the day, what is the lesson that you're going to learn from it? Or are you going to just be the victim of your own creation? Because you're not a victim of the external. The external is created by you. So then you are just a victim of your own. You're your own victim. You created you, and you stay in your own victimhood.
So it's not just the understanding that you have a choice. It's the understanding of why you make a choice.
Yes, and also that you are the sole creator of those choices.
Of the choice itself, that kind of blows my mind when you kind of think of that, is because you're not only in control of the choice, you're not only understanding the choice, but you are the reason for the choice.
Yes,
that's a whole.
So exactly, like I said, it's a whole different podcast. You can either create deliberately, or you can create by accident. So which one do you want? Do you want your mindset or your vibration of love or happiness or whatever it is? Let's say there's a line here. Yep. This is positive, this is negative, right? And emotion. So I'm positive, I'm happy, oh, I suck. So that line is basically, you've got one reality and you've got the second reality, which is positive, and you've got negative, and you're now bouncing between these two. The potency of the highest vibration, or the potency of the vibration that has the highest potency, is going to create your new reality. And this happens on a fractal. It happens from moment to moment to moment. So you choose on a moment to moment basis where your reality is going. It looks the same, but it's actually just a reprint of the previous fractal.
I feel like I lived in that space a lot, where like I like the line analogy where positive, negative, and I was positive that I'm extreme negative, extreme positive, extreme negative, and I feel like a lot of people live that way.
Absolutely, and when you're bouncing around like that, and you're not actually cognizant or deliberately creating that positive line for yourself, you could end up with a potency that's just really negative. Or you can deliberately create, and you can create the most wonderful life that you've ever had.
And to take that back to mindset, right? So we often talk about affirmations, morning meditation, breathing exercises, going through a NLP hypnosis. And it's important to say, when people used to talk about this in the 70s, they thought they were nuts, crazy hippies, right? But it's
the CIA didn't think so.
Right, different episode, but essentially, if you think about it, is those affirmations. So as a man, you stand up in the morning, right, and you stand up with a purpose. You don't lay there and stand up and go, another day is going to hit me, what am I going to do? The minute you do that, Helene just explained it very elegantly, the minute you do that, you're creating a negative or a subset of reality which is not going to go your way.
Right.
But if you choose to wake up regardless of how you feel, you go, today's going to be my greatest day.
Right.
I am loved, I am good, I am going to make the best of this day, I'm going to be the best person I can. You're creating the reality you want. So it's a very important, especially for our listeners, when we talk about how we define mind, body, spirit, and abundance, right? It's about purposefully, daily, getting up and creating, as Helene's put it, that reality which gives you the positive outcomes. You choose that.
Well, I've said this already. Halfway through 2024, I would have told you that was the worst. It was going to be the worst year of my life. By the end of 2024, it was the year that I needed. I had to have it, right? And
that's the lesson in the season again.
Right. It's the mindset, and to me, even through some of the extreme things and difficult things that I've been through as of late, I don't have bad days. I can truly say that, I don't have bad days still. Yes, I had some hard things that have come up.
But they don't define your day.
But they don't define my day, and I choose to be positive and choose to say that I'm happy. Yeah. I choose to say that I'm having a good day, and I'm on the journey of building the best version of myself ever.
Yeah.
And we're doing amazing things, and you mentioned about why are we doing this? Like the experiences that we've had and stuff like that. To me, the reason why we're doing this podcast is that we're helping by sharing our story and sharing our journey, and we're going to reach people. There's going to be people that are resonating with this because, like you said, if they're listening to this, they were seeking it out.
Yes.
That's what got me to where I am today, because I was seeking it out.
There's no coincidence.
And to me, that word is manifestation.
Yes.
Synchronicities.
Creating your own reality, man.
We're building that.
And so, 2 points. So we come to you, we go through this 4 to 10 hour session. Right, I walk out feeling amazing. Right, what's next?
Well, you have some homework to do. During the session, you'll have we'll record, or actually back up a little bit. During the session, we will write the hypnosis that you want for your life, how you want your life to be, how you want to feel in your life. What would it look like in the future? So we expand the mind a little bit and get you into a future state where it has already happened.
Gotcha.
And we write that hypnosis, we record it. And that recording you have to listen to at least for the first 10 days. We have to get that integrated. That unconscious loves repetition. Of course, that is why programming works so well, because it loves repetition. So you want to listen to that consistently. And that will just build the foundation for you to be able to use the tools that I've given you. If a negative emotion or something comes up, you have to use the tools that was given to you during the session to actually transmute that.
Okay.
And there's a few small ones, like imagining it where it is in the body, seeing, giving it a color, giving it a shape, making it spin, and then taking it out of the body, giving it a completely different color, a completely different shape, making it spin the other way, putting it back in, and it changes that immediate knee-jerk reaction.
Gotcha.
So if you suddenly feel like you're frustrated, or if you suddenly feel angry and you're like, that's weird, you have to deal with it.
Yes.
That is the homework, and that is the beginning of your journey, and you're going to do that for the rest of your life. You're going to deal with it as it comes up. You're not going to let it fester.
So you walk out, right? You walk out not just with this transformative system, which is anything from 4 to 10 hours. You walk out with a toolbox of tools that you are now accountable for to utilize, to bring forward, which essentially then sets the stage for your journey, as you said, the beginning of your journey, and now you just keep enforcing those tools, and you run out. And I found is with using those tools is that you find more purposeful ways to express and drive yourself in the world. I mean, at the end of the day, why are we here? Consciousness splits us up into our little pieces because there's a purpose for all of us to be here. Right, finding each other is not coincidence. Right, the people you have in your life are not a coincidental thing. It's things that happen for you, not to you.
Yes.
So, what I would like to end with today is when you go for the session, I'd like you to give us your final thoughts on this.
Well, can I jump in before you say that? I think you've mentioned this a number of times, and I think it's really important for people to be aware that when you get to this place where you're ready to do the hypnosis, like it's because you've been putting a lot of work into it already. So you're going to be, when you go into it, you're already equipped with the drive to want to be better. So that now when you have the toolbox and the resources to be able to put these continued efforts into place, it's going to be effective. But if you come into this, you're not already putting work in, it's not going to be as effective, because on the backside of it, you're not going to put continued work in to be better.
Yes.
It's got to be about this drive and quest to want to be better.
And that goes back to why you're doing it in the first place.
Right.
And I'll be able to assert that during my phone call with you. Like, does this person really want to change, or are they doing this because they think it's
someone told them to do it?
Someone told them to do it. This is
my last ultimatum.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So all of those things play into that. They have to want to change.
Right.
And for most people that really want to change, and even for those that have had the smallest of breakthroughs during, I call them aha moments during those breakthroughs, and you said you had a few yourself, right? So sometimes people have those aha moments later or the next day. And even for those that do have the drive, sometimes they lapse and they're like, oh no, I feel great. I feel great. I don't need to do it. Why do I need to do it? I'm amazing. I don't have to do anything. And then 6 months down the line, they back to where they were because they didn't do the work, and life happens. Yeah, they didn't use the tools.
Because life's going to happen regardless.
Oh, yeah. This is not going to erase the difficulty in your life. It's just going to give you better equip you to deal with what's coming. Right. I mean, how many times have we said, if it wasn't for the things that we've dealt with before, way back in the day, we would never have been able to deal with the stuff that we've had to deal with in the last 8 years.
That's true. It's kind of your experiences dive into it, and this kind of brings everything to fruition, so you can utilize it in a more positive way. So
things that used to stress you out like crazy, like court cases and all sorts of
anything that happens in life,
dense things that you have to deal with, relationships
don't seem as bad.
It becomes easier to deal with, and you have a better understanding of how to help others.
I think another thing that I received from this is like the ability to have extreme gratitude.
Yes.
To where, like, recognizing, like, okay, things are hard, difficult, but if I wake up every day with gratitude that I woke up, and then I have gratitude that, like, I had a family dinner. We sat around the table and we were all together, right? And just being able to
living
look
in the moment,
living
gratitude for that moment.
To say, like, even like my kids are crazy. I love them to pieces, but like they're crazy and they bring chaos. And some days where you're just like you're stressed by them or whatever, and you look at it and go, I'm actually going to I'm going to have gratitude for these moments because they're not going to be here forever, right? And so when you look at the world in that way, and I think when you really truly do these work and these things to unpack it and truly like understand how you are, why you are, it allows you to have way more gratitude and be in the moment and be much more present. Because you've said to me I think we said it on an episode, the past is no longer there and the future doesn't exist. So
and
why
also
worry about it now?
Depression is just anger at the past or at yourself or with somebody else, and anxiety is fear of the future. And neither one of those two exist. The only thing that exists is right now. You can't live in the past. I mean, the only way you do that is by thinking about it.
And I think for anybody who might be listening to this struggling with their situation, like to me, what really helped me get out of this, like were some of the state of minds that I had and some of the issues that I was dealing with, was it doesn't have to end this way. This doesn't have to be the depth. Like if you treat it like a book, or I think Joe Rogan talks about your movie, like be the hero of your own movie. Like you can be the savior of your own movie. Like you can be that hero by simply saying, this movie's not going to end like this. I have the choice to do different, especially for veterans that are out there that are struggling with whatever state that they're in because of what they've went through. And I know there's many veterans who've struggled with like, hey, like I remember my middle school principal was a Vietnam veteran. They went out on a patrol one night in the middle of the night. Anyway, they dug down in for the night, and he was taught to dig this hole or whatever to basically survive any incoming attacks. They got hit hard. His whole platoon was killed. I think he was the only survivor, or one other person, right? So he had survival skills, and of course he worked through all his traumas, and he lived a long life. But there's a lot of veterans out there who have had experiences like that. And you can sit here and just like live in that moment to say I have survivor's guilt, or you could live for them, right? And you can recognize that your story doesn't have to end there. You can be the hero of the story and tell their story and share and be like that, shining star.
Celebrate these stories.
And celebrate, right? And recognize that like that, like you had the chance to live so that you can do something big. Be the hero. Of
your purpose doesn't end.
Right.
Right, and you have the choice to continue.
Yes. Yeah. It's just really important. All that they need is the want to be better. That's it.
I love it. This was a fun episode.
So, give us a final thoughts. We're all in it. So, talk to us about consciousness. Give us some words of wisdom of how people should attain things. What are we looking for? You've helped a lot of people. You have helped a lot of people. So, for anyone out there who's listening, it's not to say that they're going to seek out hypnosis or NLP, but give some words of wisdom of what do you think are the things people should start attaining within their life, and how should they live, and the simple things they can do to make their lives better.
Well, I think it's important to remember that abundance is everywhere. And especially in the time that we're living in right now, a lot of people are experiencing what we would call lack. This is all energetic. So one of the easiest things that you can do to change your immediate future is to change your mindset and to change the way or your perspective about what's happening to you. So be very vigilant against becoming your own victim of your own creation. And small things that you can do is exactly what Kevin was saying. Keep a gratitude journal. If you're not going to do something like meditation or hypnosis, well, actually, you can meditate. There's so many wonderful videos out there on YouTube and everywhere else, free. It costs you nothing. So if you have a phone, or if you're listening to this, you are already in so much abundance. It's unbelievable. That means you have an internet line. You most likely have a laptop, or you have a phone that you're listening on. So you're already in abundance. So keep creating your abundance by focusing your energy on the things that you already have and not on the things that you don't have. Energy will beget energy, right? So if you are focusing on the things that are negative in your life, guess what you're going to get more of? You're going to get more of that. So if you are feeling angry or frustrated or unhappy, find something, one thing, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's your dog, if it's nature, if it's a walk, find that one thing that gives you the opposite of that and focus on that. And every day, if you have a choice between two things, choose the thing that gives you the most joy. Doesn't matter how crappy the choice seems to be, choose the thing that makes you the most happy. the one that brings you the most joy. And if you keep doing that, you're actually teaching the unconscious and the universe and source exactly what it is that you want, instead of telling it what you don't want, in which case, since it doesn't hear grammar, it's only going to give you the stuff that you don't want. So focus on the things that make you happy. And if you can't find those, make it up.
Thank you for making. Love it. Great episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.